The Centurion Project. Written by the 8th Day of Night. The Crystal Empire Interlude. Section 1, Part 4. The ponies that had begun filing out of the room all stopped, with Bookbinder being the one to speak.
What do you mean, General? As a backup plan?
As a battle strategy that you don't need to concern yourself with, Auditor, Elias replied. You have your job. Do it. The faster it gets done, the faster Sombra ends up not being our problem. Get. The green unicorn scowled at him, but she and the other ponies left. Elias looked at Shining Armor. We need to pick out a squad of ponies that have the best magical capabilities to combat Sombra, and since you've engaged him the most, you're the expert. The white unicorn glared at him. I don't appreciate you threatening my sister, General. And I don't appreciate Celestia throwing her up here in the first place, Elias spat. If she was so confident that her pet student could accomplish this task, she wouldn't have sent 3,000 armed-to-the-teeth ponies along with her. Do spare me your contempt, and use that piece of meat between your ears to think of a plan where your sister and your wife make it through alive. Yes? Shining Armor's muzzle curled in the beginnings of a growl, but he was halted by a pink hoof on his withers. He looked at his wife, with a scrunched muzzle and a confused look, but Cadence merely smiled and nuzzled his side, looking side-eyed at Elias.
Don't worry, dear,
she whispered, just barely loud enough for Elias to hear.
General Bright was just threatening Twilight from a place of love. He could no more help himself than you could help scaring off Twilight's little cult friend when she was still in Magic Elementary School.
Shining Armor flushed red. He was a little snobby jerk, the unicorn mumbled. Twilight would have hated being with him. Cadence chuckled and nuzzled him again before fully facing Elias.
Please, General, let's put this nastiness away and talk about this plan of yours.
It's not much of a plan, he said, ignoring Shining Armor's embarrassed look. We just need to buy more time. Searching the whole palace would take days if my whole legion was working on it. But I can't spare them for that. Not with the Crystal Fair. They'll need to be manning guard posts, making ponies feel secure.
I agree,
Cadence said.
But in truth, I don't understand why we need to fight Sombra right now. He's outside, and while I'm getting weaker, I'm not done yet.
Can you tell me honestly that you won't be able to keep the barrier up for longer if he wasn't out there prodding away at it? Elias asked. Cadence frowned and thought for a second, then sighed.
No, but putting the lives of your legionaries at stake isn't a solution. You can't fight him like he is right now. He's too slippery.
And magic does almost nothing to him, Shining Armor added. Believe me, I tried every spell I knew, and learned a few new ones and still nothing. However he made himself into that shadowy thing, it's protecting him from harm. We don't need to harm him, Elias said. Just distract him. Hit and run attacks to keep him from lashing out at the barrier. Cadence shook her head.
General, I forbid it. We need every single pony here in case we can't inspire the crystal ponies enough.
I squinted at her. What do you mean? The pink alicorn brushed aside Twilight's leftover papers so that the road map of the Empire was visible.
I did some cursory research when we first got here, but I really didn't put the pieces together until Twilight talked about the heart. While crystal ponies are most effective creatures at contributing with their ambient love magic to the heart, technically speaking, anyone can do it. It's entirely about focus, and your ponies know well about focus. They're a very disciplined bunch.
Yes, I did a good job, Elias said. Why does this matter?
It matters,
Cadence continued nonplussed.
Because we need every pony to stay near the palace for when Twilight finds the crystal heart. Even if the crystal ponies are still trapped in apathy, Or even if Sombra somehow got into the city and made them terrified, we could still power the heart enough to drive him away until we could calm them down. Normal ponies don't contribute that much to the crystal heart, though, so we need as many as possible.
She motioned to the X marks on the map.
Your guard post makes it easy to summon the entirety of your legion back to the central plaza, where I believe the crystal heart is supposed to go. As long as your ponies stay within the area you have laid out, we would have enough magic in case of an emergency.
I sighed and rubbed a thong along his eyebrow. Alright, but I guess things just got a great deal simpler. Auditor Snowball, you and Strategist Shield will assign a guard detail for Prince Armor and Princess Cadence. Then you will establish a new command post here. He tapped an area just off the main plaza. Make sure all legionaries know to report there for orders, and inform First Centurion Flash that he is in charge should he return. Tell him to send a party to come find me.
Find you where?
Snowball asked. Elias's mouth tightened into a line. Well, since Princess Cadence has requisitioned the entirety of my legion, I will be going out to distract Sombra alone. I'm not sure how effective I'll be, but I'm sure even an impossible-to-kill shadow pony will take some pleasure in beating a living punching bag. I'll remain at the border of the Empire, and if I believe the shield is weakening too much, I'll engage. Snowball looked at him aghast. Cadence frowned and shook her head.
I thought it was implied, but I included you when I speak of ponies, General. We need your love magic, just as much as we need every pony else's.
I have nothing to give, Elias said, drifting away from the table and towards his armor. Ask Auditor Snowball. The Loveling sighed.
I mean, yes, technically speaking, you don't produce love magic, but you do produce love that I can feed on. That's gotta mean something.
Yes, it means that you might be out of your snack machine, Elias said sarcastically. Save your complaints and protests for later, Auditor. The plan will move forward as I've described it. I don't care how much trust everyone seems to place in Miss Sparkle. We need every second we can get. And it's worth nothing that if she's a prodigal with her skills, as everyone seems to believe, I won't need to engage Sombra. Now will I?
That's not the point, General,
Snowball said.
You saw what happened to your feet with just a few minutes out in the snow. What happens if Sombra accelerates the magic in the snow and you end up without feet? What if you die out there for no good reason?
Elias pulled his cuirass straps tight and stood, locating his scutum in his pila. If it was for no good reason, then Princess Celestia should have never sent anyone up here. And second, you're making some bold assumptions. I'm not going on a suicide mission. Believe me, you'd know if I was doing that. He walked towards the door, scooping up his helmet on the way. Before he could get fully around the map table, Sombra appeared before him, placing a hoof on his stomach to stop his forward momentum.
General, please don't do this. It serves no purpose other than to put you at risk. We may be desperate for time, but not desperate enough to start throwing bodies at the problem. Not yet.
I know when and where bodies are needed better than anyone, Elias growled at the Loveling. And if you are so concerned for my well-being, I'd suggest you use some of that emotional manipulation magic you've been hiding away to get the crystal ponies on board with this plan of ours. Speed is key, so contribute to getting things done faster. The Loveling dropped, with his ears pinning themselves against the side of his head.
Yes, General,
he mumbled. The Loveling slinked away toward Elias's bedroll. Elias did his best to ignore Snowball's moping and instead looked at Cadence. I'll be on the edge of the city, right beside the pair of crystals that marks the entrance to the Empire. Send a message if I need to attack Sombra earlier than my discretion. Cadence began to speak, then clutched her head as she let out a loud groan. The magic pouring over her horn flickered, and Elias could have sworn he felt the slightest bit chillier. He sheathed the pilum in his shield and left the war room without another word. Leaving the palace was simple, and as he moved through the Empire streets, Elias could tell an instant difference in the crystal ponies. They were moving amongst the stalls Twilight and her friends had set up, and their demeanors were completely different. Gone were the nervous, timid glances Gone was the fear of his legionaries. Instead, the crystal ponies seemed more colorful, and they rushed around to see each other in every attraction, barely paying any mind to the red and silver-clad ponies in their midst. Those that did notice the stony-faced legionaries did their best to engage the ponies in conversation. When that didn't work, they tried to make the ponies laugh. Elias paused on his march momentarily to see a pair of foals poking and prodding at Firelight, who was sweating hard in her attempts to hold back a smile. One of the foals frowned at her, then wiggled her hips and hopped into Firelight's back. She then began to poke Firelight's helmet, while the colt rattled off questions.
Hey, miss, where did you all come from? What's with the armor? What's with that thing around your horn? Why are you wearing a potato sack?
Firelight's eyes managed to find Elias, and she slightly pleaded with him to help her, but Elias chuckled and shook his head, continuing his walk. He knew that with his bad eye out and about, the only thing he was capable of doing to a pair of foals was terrifying them. That fact was only made more evident with the fact that as soon as ponies truly started to notice him, they started not so subtly moving to the opposite side of the street. The usual whispers came up, but Elias ignored them with ease as he hardened his thoughts. He had only one purpose for the day, and that was to see Sombra back to whatever hole he crawled out of. Leaving the Empire proper, Elias spotted the archway of crystals. Beyond it was a brilliant cyan dome, and as he walked, he noticed the dome flicker. A cold wind blew past him, and flakes of snow began to fill the air, and Elias momentarily noticed a tall black wall of smoke and shadow. A pair of green eyes looked at him on the Empire, and he could have sworn he heard a roar of anger as the dome re-solidified. Elias stopped for a moment, watching for any further signs of flickering. When none came, he finished the last leg of his walk. Spotting a large crystal shaped like a tree trunk, Elias took a seat. He placed his shield and pillar beside him, then drew his sword and his whetstone, keeping an eye on the dome. Elias set to work, calmly sharpening his gladius. Night Flash wanted to scream at the ceiling. He had read so many reports, had helped hundreds of ponies, had even wrangled Canterlot nobles, but nothing, nobody, was as infuriating and hard to keep on task than Twilight Sparkle. Oh, guards ponies, look at this dumb book that I found that doesn't help our current situation at all. Oh, guards ponies, look, an interesting rock that's obviously not the crystal heart. Oh, look, guards ponies, I want to ramble for 20 minutes about how important this test is, all while ignoring the immense risks everyone is taking. Someone had delivered a message about Red's whereabouts, and Night Flash had almost lost his cool when he read that the human was going out to confront Sombra alone. Luckily for him, Bookbinder had, and still continued to rant and rave.
I mean, really?
She spat.
I am going to throttle that stupid boy. I will personally cut off his legs so he can't walk, then strap him to a bed to be cuddled until he drops dead. I'm never letting him out of my sight again. Every time, every single fucking time he does this.
Night Flash cast a glaring eye towards Twilight, who was nose deep in a book they had found in Sombra's secret laboratory. They had searched the entire palace, starting with the throne room, combing through every room and upturning every piece of furniture. They had no additional secret passages until the princess's pet had suddenly remembered key information that could have saved them hours of effort. Twilight had used dark magic to open a secret room beneath the crystal throne, and they had found a massive staircase, at the end of which were two doors. One was locked with some kind of strange crystal, while the others led to the lab where they were currently looking for a key. Night Flash had sent the rest of the squad to keep an eye on Princess Cadence in the festival, and giving them subtle orders to extract her from the Empire should things go south. His head thudded into a bookshelf as he tried to remain calm and friendly. He loved being a nice, understanding, curious pony. It was his whole deal. But with Red in such immediate danger, he couldn't help to be frustrated at their lack of progress. Unfortunately, the ranting he usually found comforting and adorable was putting him further on edge. Taking a deep breath, Night Flash straightened up his guard persona and caught Bookbinder's eye. The mare stopped her ranting and sighed.
I'm sorry, Flashy. I'm just worried.
I know, he said evenly. But your behavior right now is unprofessional and isn't helpful. Go upstairs and update Princess Cadence and Prince Armor on the current situation. A normal pony would have been hurt by his words, but Bookbinder knew him well enough to ignore his criticism. Taking another deep breath, she nodded and turned towards the doorway.
Do hurry up, Miss Sparkle,
Bookbinder said.
If Flashy is making me leave, it's because he wants to use some of his uglier interrogation methods to speed things up.
She then trotted from the room, and Night Flash listened to her host as they climbed the spiraling staircase. He noticed a flicker of motion in his periphery and found Twilight staring at him. He turned his head to meet her gaze. Auditor Binder wasn't joking, Miss Sparkle. Not even my Red knows some of the things I've done for the sake of family and friends. You need to have an answer now, or you're going to be in trouble long before the Empire is. Twilight gulped and nodded.
I think I have an idea for the crystal, but I'm not sure if it'll backfire or not.
Seeing as you're going to be the one making the attempt, I'm not sure I care. He motioned to the doorway with his wing. Please, after you. Her legs seemed to lock and her gait was awkward as she moved out of the lab and back to the locked door. She stared up at the crystal and looked back to Night Flash.
He's going to be okay. You know that, right?
The Pegasus felt his eye twitch. Miss Sparkle, I suggest you remain focused. Each moment wasted with idle chatter is another moment Red is in danger. I hold you directly responsible for his state of well-being. Violet looked back towards the crystal.
Well, I'm not worried. Pinkie Pie said that her Pinkie Sense told her that he would end this trip better than he started out.
She closed her eyes and charged her horn.
Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to think dark thoughts.
Elias slowly rocked to his feet as the barrier flickered again. Just on the other side, Sombra sat watching him carefully with those unnatural eyes. The Shadow Pony had noticed him too almost as soon as he sat down, and with the barrier's increased flickering, they had begun a staring contest. Occasionally, Sombra would unleash a spell against the barrier, and small gaps would form. Nothing ever substantial enough for him to slip through, but enough for them to glare at each other. Sombra unleashed a wave of darkness at the barrier, and the section in front of Elias flickered just as the spell hit. In an instant, an area the size of a school bus vanished, and Sombra surged forward. Elias met him head-on with a war cry and a Pelham throw. If the javelin did any damage, Elias didn't see it as he charged through the barrier and into the blinding snow. Sombra cackled, and a ball of black energy leaped out of his horn. Elias immediately dove to the ground and gritted his teeth as the magic exploded behind him, pelting him with frozen dirt. Just as quickly, he was back on his feet, and he closed the difference between himself and the Shadow Pony. His gladius hit nothing but air, and Sombra continued to cackle, his voice rising to an amused laughter. Another spell lashed out Elias, and with it being point blank, he had little time to do anything other than raise his shield. He was sent spiraling through the air. He had no doubt in his mind that the sputtering enchantments on the shield had saved his life. They did nothing to halt his flight, however, and he flew through clear of Cadence's barrier. Elias slammed him to the ground, leaving a healthy divot in the grass. He groaned and rolled onto his back, doing a quick rundown of his body. While a great deal of hurt, he didn't think he had broken anything, nor did he feel any blood pouring free. That was a good sign. The screaming Shadow Pony had managed to rip and tear his way to the barrier was not so good. The cyan barrier disintegrated behind Sombra, and a freezing wind chased the Shadow Pony into the warmth of the Empire. Elias rolled to his feet and immediately dodged away from a ball of magic. The grass blackened and small crystals sprang up, but Elias didn't have time to analyze them. He tried to get closer to Sombra, but the Shadow Pony continued lashing out with spells. Elias didn't trust his shield to take another direct hit, and he certainly didn't want to test his body armor. That left him to run and dodge, staying just ahead of each attack. The game of cat and mouse provoked louder and louder laughter from Sombra, who seemed to be enjoying playing with his food. Elias got lucky, however. The barrier slowly began to reform, and with Sombra so distracted, he didn't notice until it was too late. Elias was no expert on magic, but judging by the Shadow Pony's cries of pain, Cadence's magic didn't mix well with Sombra's. The shadows surrounding the pony faded into oblivion, and Sombra quickly lost size, going from a towering being to just above the average-sized pony, like a perfect physical match to shiny armor or Cadence. His horn was curved and glowed an eerie red, and a flowing red cape covered with steel gray armor and even grayer fur. The Shadow Pony's mane continued to flow in black shadow, however, and when his eyes opened, They glowed that same green and red. Sombra looked towards the palace and scowled.
It would appear the Crystal Princess has more power than I thought.
He shrugged and looked towards Elias with a smile.
But that isn't necessarily a bad thing, given my plans for her. So, monkey, what hole did they dig you from?
Elias rolled his shoulders. Probably a prettier one than wherever you're gonna be rotting for the last 1,000 years. Tell me, was it fun getting your ass handed to you by a pony that turned into a big white bureaucrat? Sombra snorted and he began to circle Elias. The human matched his pace, and they carefully stalked around each other.
Funny that Soul would send a chattering monkey with no respect to face me. But then again, she was always a bit barbarous.
That's rich coming from a guy who all snarls and snorts 2 minutes ago. Elias shot back. Why'd you suddenly become so chatty? What? The magic didn't kill me, so you thought talking to me to death would work? Sombra heads pitched back as he laughed aloud.
I like your spirit, monkey. A quick-witted attack dog. Something new and fresh. Hopefully I can reanimate your head when I'm mounted on my throne. I do so love vocal sparring.
Elias rolled his eyes. Well, I can't say the overconfidence is new. At least you aren't babbling on about your plans of conquest. Here's my deal for you, Sombra.
That's King Sombra to you, whelp.
Sombra growled. Elias spat at the unicorn's hooves. You're king of nothing, and even if you were, I wouldn't care. Leave the Empire and crawl into the tundra. Twilight will find the crystal heart any minute now, and I have a feeling that if you don't like Princess Cadence's barrier, you're really not gonna like the heart. Sombra cackled again.
So that's the princess's grand plan. Not a bad one. But you should be more concerned, monkey. I doubt the crystal heart will take a liking to one of your breed, just like it detests me.
Elias stopped his circling, arranging himself so that his head was back to Cadence's barrier. Sombra's muzzle curled just slightly in confusion, so Elias shrugged and dropped into a combat stance. I wouldn't want you to leave when the beating starts, he said. Now, let's see if the little pony you are is as immune to being cut down as the big shadowy fuck. He let out a war cry and rushed forward. Sombra's horn sputtered, and Unicorn's eyes widened in panic as the spell produced nothing more than a spark. Closing the distance between them, Elias cut at the Unicorn's neck, trying to get an easy kill. Sombra was slippery, however, and he managed to hop backward. The Unicorn closed his eyes tight, and before Elias could swing again, he teleported away. Elias rolled on his heels and raised his scutum in time to deflect the swing of a massive scythe. The crimson blade leached the color from Elias' shield, but the human was forced to smack away another hit aimed for taking his head off. As Sombra prepared to strike him a third time, Elias braced his feet and shoved forward. The tip of the scythe scratched his helmet, but Elias felt the satisfying crunch of wood meeting flesh and bone. Sombra staggered away, taking his scythe with him. Elias took a brief respite to catch his breath, as did Sombra. The shadow pony glanced back at the barrier, then at Elias, making sure the human hadn't moved.
So the Crystal Princess's little shield reduces my strength. No matter. I still have enough power to kill you.
Elias smirked. If that were true, you wouldn't be panting after our little skirmish. Guess you should have spent more time on the training grounds than studying. He rushed forward again before Sombra could reply. Feather picked off a scythe swing, while Elias' scutum swung at Sombra's muzzle. The shadow pony managed to avoid the shield, but with Elias so close his scythe was nearly useless. Elias' gladius stabbed at the pony, keeping him dancing back with a series of jabs and stabs. Completely on the offensive, Elias was able to think his next attack through, and as Sombra charged his horn to teleport away, Elias abandoned both his sword and shield. Sombra became momentarily confused again, and in that moment, Elias rushed forward and snatched the pony up in a bear hug. Elias immediately let his superior weight drag them both to the ground. He began to pound on Sombra's face. His fist rose and fell like a hammer, splitting his knuckles by the 4th hit, and knocking one of Sombra's teeth loose by the 7th. Sombra's horn lit up again, and Elias switched tactics, rubbing both hands around the unicorn's neck in an attempt to strangle him. For a moment, Elias thought his tactic worked, as Sombra's eyes bugged out and he tried to scramble free. His hooves beat futilely against Elias's armor, and the human tightened his grip, trying to throttle the unicorn as quickly as possible. A thin black beam sprang from Sombra's horn despite Elias's best effort, and before the human could react, it raced into his forehead. Elias immediately sat up in bed, clutching at his chest. He took long, deep breaths in an attempt to slow his heart rate. I think I'm gonna have a heart attack, he said aloud. He nearly jumped again when somebody rolled over next to him and smiled.
Well, don't do that, my love.
Luna whispered blearily.
I do like my human with his heart intact. Thank you very much.
Elias blinked stupidly at the alicorn, clearly lying in his bed, underneath his covers. After a long moment of thinking, all he could say was, Luna? And then he was back. Elias opened his eyes and rolled onto his side, immediately vomiting out what little he had for breakfast. As he emptied his guts and struggled to find his breath, Elias cast a hateful glare towards Sombra. The unicorn was in a similar state, patting hard as he glared daggers back at Elias.
So you're weak to mind magic then? Good. I'll use that to make your life Tartarus before I end it.
Big talk, Elias spat in reply. He staggered to his feet and stumbled his way over to his discarded gladius and shield. By the time he had scooped him up and he fell into a proper position, Sombra had managed to get to his feet. The unicorn snarled at him, and then their blades clashed again. As they fought, Sombra's horn would light up, and when it did, Elias made sure to press harder to prevent whatever the unicorn had shown him. The vision had been so clear, so real. He had really felt Luna beside him, and had he not been so confused at the presence of the alicorn, he had no doubt that he would have succumbed to the illusion. While Sombra struggled against him in a physical combat, Elias noticed continued flickers in the barrier, increasing in intensity the longer they fought. He tried to shove Sombra with his shield, but the unicorn cackled and managed to teleport away. Elias braced his feet and pivoted, hiding behind his shield as black magic splashed against it.
It seems the Crystal Princess is failing, monkey.
Sombra said with glee.
And soon you will as well.
Elias poked his eyes above his shield and found Sombra, then tried to charge the unicorn again. Sombra met his charge with a scythe swing and another laugh.
Although, I believe we should stop this little charade we have going on. You are an exceptional combatant, but the more that barrier weakens, the greater my magic becomes. All I have to do is outlast you, monkey, and I am more than capable of that.
Elias batted aside another swing, aimed for his chest, then lashed out with feather. The blade just missed as Sombra slithered away.
But then again,
the gray unicorn continued,
I could have uses for one of your ferocity. Please, let's stop this farce and have a little chat.
Sombra teleported again, and Elias was again forced to turn and brace as shadow magic splashed against his scutum. The shield had lost most of its red color, and now even then, brilliant silver lightning bolts were draining away. Why does everyone talk so much when they fight? Elias spat. Is it too much to ask you to just shut up and die?
Oh, you poor creature,
Sombra said.
I am not trying to talk to you. I am merely trying to explain to you your true potential.
His horn sparked, and he vanished. Elias turned on his heel to meet another magic attack, but quickly realized he had been duped. A pop resounded in his ears, and he felt another bolt of magic enter his head. Blackness consumed his vision, but after a moment, Elias realized that was just because his eyes were closed. He cracked them open to find himself on a completely different battlefield. Ponies writhed and fought around him. The sound of clashing steel, bones crunching, and the screams of pain and triumph when the bawling ponies touched his ears like a sickening orchestra. He saw 3 distinct colors amongst the ponies, and it was clear that the silver-clad ponies had an advantage of the ponies decked in blue and gold. In fact, on a second glance, Elias realized that none of the corpses strewn around were wearing silver. Night Flash had a sadistic grin on his face as he dipped around Elias, and his wings blade ripped some unfortunate solar guard apart. Bookbinder raced by next, her horn glowing brilliantly. 3 lunar guards suddenly dropped, their necks twisted and broken. Elias watched as more and more ponies he knew raced forward, tearing into their fellows with ease. And throughout it all, he felt a foreign sense of pride and satisfaction as the silver-clad ponies, his ponies, triumphed over the king's enemies. His eyes flickered to the ground, and Elias realized he recognized the body at his feet. Nightshade's vacant eyes stared up, and a small trickle of blood flowed from her mouth. The sight provoked a turn in his gut, and the feeling of pride, of victory, vanished. A second later, the illusion did too. Elias staggered forward, quickly finding his balance as he let out a furious war cry. Feathers slashed at Sombra's throat, and Elias was pleased to feel the slightest impact as the gladius traced a bloody line in the unicorn's fur. "Do you really think killing my friends is what entices me?" Elias roared. "Do you think seeing the ones I love turn into killers is what I want?" Sombra winced as Elias continued his furious assault, but he teleported away again. This time, Elias immediately found him and began to stalk forward. Sombra frowned slightly as he eyed the human up and down.
"Perhaps I was mistaken,"
Sombra admitted.
"You are a warrior out of need, not personal gain. You seek no glory, but only what your prowess in the art of killing can earn you."
He flashed a grin and sent on a blistering bolt of magic. Elias stepped aside the magic with his shield, ignoring the freezing sensation in his arms as he rushed forward. Sombra's horn charged brighter, and a second bolt leaped out. Elias braced behind his shield and locked his feet to block the blow, and then as soon as the magic had faded, he poked his head to charge the unicorn again. A small lens of blackness entered his forehead without resistance, and his vision once again vanished to black.
"There is always more that entices the strong-willed,"
Sombra whispered in his ear.
"You mentioned your friends and lovers. So tell me, human, which would you consider these?"
Elias opened his eyes to find 2 pairs staring back, one magenta and the other sparkling green. He blinked at Celestia and Luna stupidly, then looked up around him. He was half naked, lying in a lavish bed, set in an equally lavish bedroom, decorated to the ceilings with books and trophies, accolades, medals, everything he had earned, had taken justly, just like the mares draped over his bare chest. Luna sat side by side with Celestia, and both were staring at him with nothing less than absolute adoration. Luna traced a long scar on his belly with her hoof, while Celestia rested her muzzle on his left bicep, staring out at him with a smile. Only when he felt something moving lower on his body did Elias notice that 2 other mares were nuzzling at his crotch. Cadence giggled as she noticed his eyes on her, while Nightshade didn't seem to notice his gaze at all. She was instead fixated with his. Elias shook his head in frown of confusion. That wasn't right. None of it was.
What's wrong, my lord?
Luna asked, her voice a sultry whisper.
Don't tell me you've grown tired of your breeding slaves again.
Celestia giggled and nibbled at his chest.
It's alright if you are, though. I take no issues with a fresh crop. Just so long as you are happy, my lord. Tell us who you want, and we will deliver.
Elias shook his head again, his bad eye twitching as he stared at the black collars around their necks. This isn't right. I don't love you. Not like this. Not.
"What does it matter?"
Sombra asked, appearing in the lounge chair across the room. It unnerved Elias how genuine the unicorn's smile was. It was almost like he truly cared what Elias thought, how he felt.
Your king always cares,
The voice whispered. Before Elias could drive the voice away, Sombra spoke.
You don't need to love them to own them, Elias Bright. You are above them. You have the power in your hands to take what you want, and we both know you know that. Love is a lie ponies sell to make themselves seem stronger than they truly are. But we both know that love means nothing in the face of true power, that of our strong wills. Look at your slaves. Look at how you can finally exercise your will over them, keeping them happy and safe. Isn't that what you want? To keep these ponies safe?
Elias screwed his eyes shut and clutched at his head. It took all of his willpower to shake off the illusion, and even then it was barely enough. He staggered backward, trying to get his rebelling mind back under control. Foreign thoughts were infiltrating, trying to change what he knew, but he wouldn't let him. He forced up his rage and used it like a hammer. He only loved Luna, and he knew for a fact that he wouldn't if she was so reliant on every command. She was just as strong as he was. Hell, she was likely stronger. He just needed to focus to kill Sombra. That was his only... Another beam entered his head, and Elias found himself back on the bed with Luna pressing her lips tightly against his.
It seems I'm getting closer, my friend.
Sombra hissed.
I can feel your heart, your very soul. Give in to me.
Elias melted into the alicorn's kiss, unable to resist the warmth of her body. She giggled as his hands braced her cheeks, and she hugged him tight as she pressed deeper into his kiss. As his breath ran short, Luna pulled away and smiled at him. Elias couldn't help but to feel complete at the sight of that wonderful smile. His heart would do anything to see that smile over and over again.
I can give you the Luna Princess.
Sombra hissed in his ear.
She means nothing to me. I can give her to you, to make her your slave for all time. All you must do is submit.
Elias nodded slowly, locking eyes with Luna.
I love you so much.
The blue alicorn giggled.
And you own me utterly, my lord.
The words sounded so hollow to his ears, and for a moment, Elias couldn't figure out why.
Own?
He echoed.
But you love me too, right?
Luna rolled her eyes and let out another giggle.
Why would that matter, my lord? You took me. Our king broke me, and you took me like the savage beast you are.
She purred, ignoring Elias's growing revulsion.
Isn't this what you want? To see me utterly yours?
Elias's mind snapped into focus. The illusion shattered, just as Sombra began lowering an infernal-looking helmet onto his head. Elias ducked out from beneath the helmet, then grabbed it and threw it as hard as he could at Sombra's face. The unicorn's head snapped back as the helmet crunched his muzzle, and his magic sputtered for a moment. Elias panicked picked up his normal red-plumed helmet and slid it back on his head. He then grabbed his scutum, clenching the handle tightly in his fist.
If you think weak shadows and hollow offers will break me, you're dead wrong. And I've had enough of these mind games of yours. You're going to die. Right here. Right now.
Sombra wiped the blood from his nose and glared daggers at Elias.
Fine, human. If you don't want to be awarded for loyal service, then I'll make sure you follow out of fear. Let's see how much you truly love those ponies of yours.
Elias rushed forward as Sombra charged his horn and sent more bolts of darkness lacing towards the human. Night Flash ran as hard as he could up the stairs, with Twilight at his side. They had lost more time as the unicorn lived through her worst nightmares. But fortunately for Night Flash, he had been able to shake off the illusion caused by the dark crystal relatively easily. He had already seen Elias at death's door, and had already stared down rejection from his wife. Both he had conquered, and the illusion had simply ended. After a few moments, he had managed to shake Twilight free, and after telling her what he had seen, she had come up with a solution. Instead of charging the crystal with dark magic, like she had first attempted, she instead charged the crystal with harmonious magic. The result had opened the door easily, and they had been presented their next daunting task: a massive spiral staircase leading straight up. Night Flash hadn't given the stairs a second glance, and instead tried flapping up. It was then that he learned that the Sombra had laid a trap specifically for Pegasi. Just like the crystals locking down Shining Armor's horn, his wings were frozen to his sides, locked in place by heavy black crystals that had simply appeared as soon as he had taken flight. With flight not being an option, he had led the charge up the stairs, making a mental note to thank Elias for all those days of running in full armor. He had thought it was a little more than a way to break down ponies via exhaustion, but he could feel his well-formed muscles easily adapting to the weight the crystals added to his wings. Twilight was having trouble keeping the pace, however, and he couldn't really blame her for that. Who was truly prepared to climb thousands of stairs? He had to just keep pushing her, had to keep motivating her to reach the top. "We're getting closer." He noticed the purple unicorn pause to catch her breath. "I don't know how many stairs are left, but we've come up at least 3 or 4 stories. Twilight stared at the remaining climb and managed to frown despite her panting mouth.
I think I have an idea.
She levitated Night Flash in the air, lifting herself. She levitated them under the stairs, so that their hooves rested on the other side of the stairs. Night Flash frowned as the unicorn strained herself. "Miss Sparkle, what exactly is this idea?" He wasn't proud to admit that his shriek was slightly girlish when Twilight reversed gravity and began sliding down the now ramp-like stairs. Twilight let out a squeal of joy as they sped along, and she beamed at Night Flash as they continued sliding.
Princess Leslie used to always tell me to work smarter, not harder,
She shouted over the wind rushing in their ears.
Since all the crystals are super smooth, I thought a little bit of force combined with a smooth gliding spell to reduce traction and prevent rug burn was just a trick to get us moving.
Night Flash looked at the slubbing rump to find a light purple glow keeping his fur from rubbing away. For the first time since they had started their search for the heart, he laughed. All it took was a hoof to send him spinning, and he continued laughing as they spiraled to the top of the palace. It steadily grew closer. With a little effort on their part, Night Flash grinned at the thought of having plenty of energy to rush out to Red once they had retrieved the crystal heart.
Hold on, Red,
he thought.
I'm coming as fast as I can.
Elias managed a surprisingly agile move for somebody in his situation. Sombra had gotten craftier, and his attacks more potent as the barrier continued to fail. Elias leaped between 2 beams of darkness aimed at his head and stomach respectively and managed to land in a roll, springing up to slash at Sombra's throat. The unicorn growled and summoned a black crystal as a shield. Feather bit into the stone, and Elias managed to rip the Gladius free, momentarily cursing himself for learning to fight in heavy armor. After nearly 30 minutes of fighting, he was exhausted, and every part of his body was crying out for a break. The thick plates designed to turn swords and arrows just slowed him down as he was forced to dodge magical attacks. Sombra so far hadn't been able to act on his threat to show Elias what he was afraid of, but the human knew that the threat would be realized sooner than he would have liked. He just hoped that the Great Unicorn would waste time torturing him when he could be rushing towards the Empire. Teleporting away, Sombra appeared between the crystals marking the entrance to the Empire. He took a deep breath and straightened, smiling as all of his sweat and minor wounds Elias had managed to inflict melted away.
I think I have figured out the perfect formula to break you forever, human. The time I spent sifting through your thoughts have gave me many ideas, but I've pieced together quite a journey to take you on.
Elias' chest heaved as he tried to think of a clever answer, but he was at a loss. He just wanted the unicorn before him dead. That, and a drink of water. His throat was dry and burning from his exertion. Sombra chuckled at his silence.
No more witty comebacks, human. I must say, I'm disappointed.
He shrugged.
It is of no consequence, however. While I enjoyed our little duel, I have much more to do today, and our time has come to its end so that I can take back my empire.
His smile took on a wicked glint.
But I think the icing on the cake will be having you at my side, helping me to enslave all of those delicious ponies.
Elias forced his legs into motion and readied his shield to block the Shadow Pony's attack. Sombra released a single beam that landed towards Elias's head, and then, as it was just a splash into its shield, it split into 7 parts, all of them swerving around the small piece of protection. Elias dropped to the ground and clutched at an arrow embedded deep in his chest. Air refused to enter his lungs, and blood poured from his mouth, making his slow suffocation all the worse. Cruel red eyes looked down at him, and Sombra sneered.
Not a bad look for you, but this is more blind panic than fear. Let's try something else, shall we?
Elias managed to get a gasp of air before he was thrown face into the dirt. A glint of sunlight stabbed at his eye from the glare of a descending dagger. Elias rolled away from the blade and to his feet to find Nightshade glaring hate at him. Elias glanced down towards the bloody gladius in his hand, then towards the Thestral.
Come on, Nightshade,
he said slowly, extending his hand.
We're friends. Despite our differences, we always have been. Remember? You and Scalpel were technically my first friends.
The Thestral growled and leaped at him, swinging hard for his throat. Elias parried the blow and shoved Nightshade back. The gray Thestral rolled to her feet and hissed at him.
We were never friends, Bright. You were just a tool for the princesses, but you couldn't even do that right. Everything was a fight. Every attempt to help you pushed away. You didn't and don't deserve our help. You're a pathetic failure, and I wish I had just killed you on the night we met.
Elias gritted his teeth, trying best to ignore her words.
That may be true, but I still succeeded where it mattered. As long as they're safe. They?
Sombra whispered in his ear.
Oh. Perhaps you mean these ponies.
Elias felt a sharp pain on his cheek, and he took a step back as he stared down at a furious-looking bookbinder. The green unicorn spat in his face and pushed him back another step. A glance around showed him that he was at their new house, the one they had invited him to visit. He had initially rejected the invitation, but Night Flash had managed to convince him to forego a lunch break to give the place a look. Their plans for upstairs were already laid out, but they had kept just enough secret to keep their agreement.
How dare you come here?
Bookbinder shrieked.
After all the times you've hurt us, turned us away? Did you really think you would be welcome back?
She shoved him into the dirt. Elias winced at her snarl, but he did his best to stay calm.
Bookbinder, you know why I turned you away. It was for your safety. If not for the march, I
don't love you!
The mare bellowed.
I never have, and I never will. You burn that bridge, Elias. You don't get to tell us no time and time again, and then come back when it suits you. You're no son of mine, and as far as I'm concerned, you never were.
Elias felt tears creep into his eyes, and his heart dropped as Night Flash seemed to appear at her side with a deep scowl on his face. The first pony to truly approach him. The first pony to work with him, just to be there. The first pony he had called friend, spat in his face. Get out, Elias, he said coldly. We're tired of your games. You're not welcome here. Ever. Get out and don't come back. Elias screwed his eyes shut and held his hands to his ears.
It's not real, he whispered. It's just an illusion.
The hateful words vanished and Sombra chuckled, pacing behind the man.
Perhaps not. But would you like to see something that is real? Dark magic has wonderful uses, including seeing the future.
Elias tried to find his strength and managed to find enough to grab his sword and stand. His legs were shaky, though, and he couldn't find his normal white-hot rage. The looks on their faces The words they said. He told himself that it was all lies, but he couldn't get the sound of their voices so filled with loathing out of his head. Sombra smiled at him.
Come now, human. Where's that bravado of yours? One so strong as you should be able to tough on through these images, yes? You're the kind of creature that believes he can change his fate, yes?
Sombra brought out a laugh, the world around Elias being to shift and change.
Let's put that mentality to the test, shall we?
The scenery around them shifted, and to give them a bird's eye view of a forest, many of the trees were scorched clean, and great swaths of grass had been burned away. Broken weapons and shields lay scattered amongst the carpet of bodies, but even on first glance, Elias could tell that there were far more Minotaur bodies than there were ponies. Living ponies trotted back and forth across the battlefield, treating the wounded, while also executing the dying Minotaurs. Sombra snorted, with barely concealed disappointment.
It seems you've achieved victory. Congratulations. How much, I wonder, did these friends pay to achieve this victory of yours?
Elias ignored his words. He was already looking. The first he saw was gray granite, his neck twisted at an odd angle, and his eyes wide open in a lifeless stare. Besides the earth pony was a whimpering nightshade. A pair of healers were trying their best to heal the Thestral, but they had their work cut out for them. One of her eyes was nothing but a bloody mush, while one of her wings were gone altogether, ripped off at the base. All that remained was a dripping stump. Further down the field, Elias saw Ice Blossom wailing into the air, as the solar guard staunched in a bleeding stump of her tail. Next to her, Scarlet Shield looked almost like he was sleeping peacefully, save for the trio of arrows jutting from his throat. Dozens of legionaries created a silvery carpet across the bloody ground, and Elias knew the names of each. Unfortunately, he couldn't even begin to think of grieving for them, as his eyes locked into the carriage that was supposed to protect the princesses. He could see a brilliant red trail leading up the carriage steps. Someone grinned at him as the image zoomed in closer, allowing Elias to see every gory detail. Outside of the carriage, Midnight Chaser stared into the air, his throat ripped open and his fur soaked red with blood. Bloody Bandage was almost unrecognizable next to him. Her bones turned to powder and her body mangled. The door to the carriage was gone, and it was too easy to step inside. Elias immediately wished he hadn't. Another him was hugging Bookbinder tightly, and they both openly wept over a limp, dark blue form. Next to them sat Celestia, pleading futilely with a vacant-eyed Luna, an arrow speared directly into the Alicorn's heart. Elias could only stare at the carnage, his mind unable to process what he was seeing. Sombra stood beside him, his smile absent.
It truly is a tragedy, Elias.
He said solemnly.
An utter waste of talent and beauty. Luckily for us, however, this is preventable. I can feel the love you have for these ponies, and especially the Luna Princess.
He put a hoof around Elias's waist.
I, too, have a great love for ponies, Elias, but I recognize that they are so very fragile.
He waved a hoof at Nightflash's still body.
This doesn't need to be. You and I, we can make sure this never comes to pass. If you submit to me, together we can take back my empire. Then, I promise on my crown as king that I will make sure each and every pony you love is taken care of.
Sombra tilted his head towards the scene.
Don't. And well, you are strong, human. But even you cannot fight fate.
Elias felt his fingers twitch of their own volition, and he felt something in his mind snap. The logical side of his brain calmly explained its points to the irrational, emotional side. It spoke of how he was being played, that Sombra was lying to him. The emotional side listened, and slowly began to realizing that it didn't matter if Sombra was lying or not. The unicorn dared to threaten his parents, dared to threaten Luna. The emotional side fed the conclusion it reached to the wild beast kept pacified in the third part of his mind. Together, the beast and the emotional side built up into a blinding fury. Elias's hand curled into a fist so tight that his fingernails caused his palms to bleed. "How dare you?" he whispered. Sombra cocked an eyebrow at him.
Human, I did not do this. It is merely a vision of your...
His words stopped as Elias's scutum slammed into his throat. Elias screamed like a wild animal as the illusion shattered, but if he noticed, he didn't show it. His eyes were focused on one thing. A fist slammed into Sombra's jaw, followed by another hit from his scutum. The unicorn crumpled to the ground, and Elias pounced on him. The unicorn tried to curl up to protect his body, but Elias pulled his limbs apart by force and began raining down blows, beating the unicorn bloody as he let out a pure, mindless rage. Sombra's muzzle broke under the powerful blows, and when the unicorn tried to escape with his magic again, Elias grabbed his horn in one hand, and his scutum slammed into the base of Sombra's horn until it shattered, and Elias tossed the remains behind him. Sombra wailed and cried out in pain, flailing at Elias's chest futilely with his hooves. Elias discarded his scutum and gripped the unicorn's head in his hands. He brought his forehead down to meet the pony's muzzle and felt a satisfying crunch ripple through Sombra's face as the bones in his muzzle shattered into more tiny pieces. Then, the beating continued. Elias lost count of how many times his fist rose and fell, but each hit made him smile, and he felt truly alive punishing the unicorn. Somehow, despite many of his teeth being gone, his tongue swelling up, Elias heard Sombra mumble.
We found it. The crystal heart is charging. We will be dead in minutes.
Elias looked up to find Cadence's dome completely gone. Snow whirled around in the air, and shadow magic was slowly encroaching on the Empire. But it didn't matter. The hairs on his arms stood up as the light emanating from the palace began to pulse. He growled and slammed his fist into Sombra's jaw again. "Damn them!" he hissed. "I want more time." He glared down with hate-filled eyes. "I need to make you suffer." Elias drew his dagger from behind his back and plunged into Sombra's flank. The unicorn cried out in pain, and he began to beg.
Please. Please, enough. I relent. I forswear the Empire. I...
Elias slammed a fist across the unicorn's face. "I don't give a fuck about the Empire, you stupid bastard!" Elias screamed in his face. "You wanted me to break. Well, guess what? This is what this looks like. Now suffer!" Elias tried to punch the unicorn faster as a massive glowing barrier formed around the palace. It slowly began to move outward.
Keepers, please, save me.
Sombra wept.
I'll be good. I'll take your punishment. Please, just save me.
Elias backhanded the unicorn, shutting him up, then grabbed his dagger and ripped it free. He immediately plunged it back in, twisting it in Sombra's ribs. He snarled as the hum reached his ears, and he looked up to find the barrier almost upon them. Elias looked back down to Sombra, making sure to catch the unicorn's eyes. "If you ever try to come back, I'll be waiting." Elias punched him in the throat. "If you thought today was hell, then I'll teach you the meaning of..." The barrier passed over them, and Sombra let out a final shriek of pain before vanishing into a cloud of smoke. Elias watched as the smoke immediately dissipated, and he struggled to hold back a howl of frustration. With no target to unleash his rage on, however, his anger began to slowly cool, and Elias regained his mental faculties. Taking several deep breaths, Elias grabbed his dagger from the grass and slid it back into his sheath. Just as his heart began to slow, and calm began to focus in his mind, his skin ripped apart. Great gashes appeared on his arms and legs, and Elias felt blood drip into his eyes. Then the pain hit. Elias fell back onto the grass, screaming in agony as his nerves seemed to catch fire, making him writhe in pain. The world seemed to turn white as his jaw stretched as wide as it could, and Elias lost consciousness as he let out another long scream. I don't know if I'll be adding the scream in post-production, but man, especially having to do so much of Sombra and Elias's voice. Already doing a 1-hour video thing is already a big tax on my voice, but Elias, I don't think I can do it properly right now. Elias has more gravel in his voice, but then you got Sombra that dips more into my deeper register, but also still has growl. So I'm having to double down on that, while also having to yell, while also having to scream at the end. Again, I don't know if I'm adding that. I did do a scream, that's when my voice sounds like shit. But I hope you guys enjoyed this little 1-hour thing. I hope it makes up for the fact that I didn't upload much this week, because I've been focusing on editing this and, making sure this gets out, because TCP is my favorite series. I am biased. But hopefully we eventually start getting back into the regular flow of the schedules. I don't know, we'll see, especially with Section 2 of the Crystal Empire Interlude, and how all that will play out. We'll see. What also we'll see is my thankfulness for my wonderful Patreons. Thank you, my tier 1s, Pony Entertainment, Macario, Lord HiE, Jason, Hyperlink, Chase the Master, Bounce Guidance, Redeemer of Dark Lost Nebula, Night in Game, Sword Brother Mordred, Dreamless Portal, Steve, and Shadow Angel. My tier 2s, Captain Blue, Shadow, Kayak Mist, The Animated Ghost, DGMX 2000, Element the Wolf, H1 Wolf, King, Potato 20, Mr. Crazy Deacon, Solar Comet, 212 Trooper, Volio Cod, G-Man 121 Karza, Mackenzie McCollis, Nocturne, Papa Lennon, Cloud Zaza, Solus Eclipse, Sword Brother Mordred, Artie Bright, Weekend Dragon Wolf, Zale Spark, Sticks, and Nobody. A big thank you to my previous Titan tiers, Dark Guardian, Danish Dash, Maverick, and User 1842. A large thank you to my current ones, Bis Eclipse, and Silent Titan. I appreciate you guys' support so much, and it makes doing this all worth it. I love you all. This has been Firehearth. Have a wonderful day.